We'll go ahead and, good morning. I'll wake up my fellow trustees and call the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority June 1st trustee meeting to order. Are there any citizens to be heard? If not, I'll move to item 4, which is the approval of the minutes of the Cotpa board meeting held on May 4th, 2018.
Move approval.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item 5 is our consent docket. We have 4 items on the consent docket, and we have Jason Martinez, the Assistant City Treasurer, here to tell us about item A, which is a resolution to adopt the updates to the City of Oklahoma City investment policy.
Good morning.
Jason.
My name is Jason Martinez, and I'm an assistant to Bob Pondkilla, the City Treasurer of the City of Oklahoma City. As you know, the investment policy was revised by our City Council on August the 1st, 2017. We review our investment policy on an annual basis, and many of the changes this time around are pretty cosmetic. For example, the updating of the glossary in the back. But there are a couple of changes that are significant, and I want to bring them to your attention. The first change that is significant, we are adding Federal Home Loan Bank letters of credit as an acceptable instrument for insuring your bank deposits. This option does not have to be exercised by Cotpa, but it is an option if you and your Bank of Oklahoma chose to do so. I also want to point out that the letters of credit are authorized by the Oklahoma state statutes. The other change that we made was being just a little bit more specific about the banking authority that the city treasurer has for the funds that are under his authority or within his custody, such as deploying demand deposit accounts, investment accounts, or safekeeping accounts. We're not really giving him any new powers, but rather just maybe detailing or being a little bit more specific, itemizing what he does. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So this policy gets us in line with what the City of Oklahoma City uses for its other investment accounts?
It's the same policy that the City of Oklahoma City approved.
Okay.
Yeah. And I understand that I know that the CAFR references that y'all operate under the same policy as the city. So.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, we'll go ahead. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Sir.
And I guess there are 4 items on the consent docket, this being one of them. Are there any other items that trustees would like comment on? If not, is there a motion to accept the consent docket?
I move to accept.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, item 6 is items for individual consideration. Item A is the approval of the final plans and bidding documents for project phase 2 for our maintenance facility CNG upgrade, and authorization for the administrator to advertise and release the bidding documents. Jason?
Yeah. So again, this is phase 2 of our CNG fueling station project. As you'll recall, we really kind of broke it into 2 phases. One, the fueling facility infrastructure, and then, of course, the item you have before you today is phase 2, which is the upgrades that are required in our fleet maintenance facility to really make the facility optimal for working on CNG buses. So with approval of this item here, we will obviously advertise for bids and bring back a recommendation for contract approval to the Board of Trustees for consideration.
So the cost of the construction and everything is estimated to be 1.5.
Yes, thank you. For this portion of the project, phase 2, the estimate, 1.5 million, and 80% of that is covered through federal funds.
Okay, is there any discussion or comment? If not, is there a motion to approve the final plans and specifications? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item B is the approval of letters of intent with the University of Central Oklahoma at the Santa Fe Plaza.
Yes, as the trustees are aware, we've been having ongoing discussions with the University of Central Oklahoma about that organization occupying more of the tenant space in the Santa Fe parking garage. As you'll recall, UCO and Beck Design both were here to present a preliminary report back in the late fall, early winter. The trust actually approved final plans and specs for the improvements related to the space back on March 2nd. And in anticipation of awarding a contract in July, both parties determined it would be appropriate to formalize the understanding through a letter of intent, essentially with Cotpa committing to making the improvements and UCO committing to entering into a long-term lease for the space. And again, just to give you a sense of the size of the project, currently UCO has about 2,000 square feet of space, and that'll be increasing to nearly 18,000 square feet of space.
And the estimated revenue for the
yeah, we still have to negotiate the actual cost per square foot, but yeah, somewhere around $213,000 a year is what we're estimating. But again, we'll negotiate what that final rate is, bring that to the trust for consideration, and a lot of that will have to do too with the final cost of the project, because we want to negotiate a rate that will allow us to recoup our costs in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from the trustees? If not, is there a motion to approve the letter of intent?
Move for approval.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item number C, the approval of the lease agreement with Veolia Energy Oklahoma City, Inc. at the Santa Fe parking garage for, it's a lease agreement from June 1st, 2018 through through May 31st, 2023, with an estimated annual revenue of $18,020. Jason?
Yep, so this is a new lease with Veolia. Again, its initial term of 5 years with 3 additional renewal terms of 5 years. Actually, Veolia, at the time, Trigen Energy, they've actually occupied about 2,000 square feet of space in that Santa Fe parking garage first floor area since about 2003. The lease, the original lease was renewed, and now the lease has expired. We've negotiated a new lease, and that's what's presented to the board for approval today. And again, as you had mentioned, estimated revenue $18,020 a year, or $9.01 per square foot.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions on this item? If not, is there a motion to approve the agreement?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item D is to enter into executive session. I think we need a motion to move that to the heel of the docket. So it's been moved and seconded. We take an individual roll call. So, James? Yes.
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 Okay. So we will move that to the heel of the docket. So moving on to item number 7, the ratification of claims and payroll. Is there a motion to approve the claims and payroll for May 1st through May 30th?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, item number 8, our financial reports. Jason?
So I have a few comments on the financial reports. If I could direct your attention to page 2 of the budget to actuals through 10 months of the fiscal year ending April 30th, 2018. Again, as I mentioned, over the last few months, actually, we're seeing a lot of consistency when we compare actual revenues and actual expenditures to budget. But looking on page 2, starting with our transportation operations, a couple of things I wanted to point out. If you look at the first 2 lines under the operating revenues, we see the fare box and the fare media sales continue to come in under budget. Combined, they're a little over $200,000 less than what we had anticipated. A lot of that is being offset by revenues greater than what we had anticipated in the miscellaneous category, and a lot of that is primarily interest revenue. The other revenue item I wanted to mention is just the federal grant reimbursement revenue. You can see we're about 28, or I should say just under 29,000 over what we had anticipated through 10 months of the fiscal year, so that's been pretty stable over the last 2 months. Overall, our total operating revenues are about just under 65,000 less than what we had anticipated through 10 months of the fiscal year. Looking at the operating expenditures, again, if you look over there and compare the actual expenditures to budget, the numbers are almost identical to what we looked at last year. So again, a lot of consistency there. Continue to have significant savings in personnel services, about $570,000 less than what we had anticipated. And then you can follow each one of those expenditure categories down. And overall, our total operating expenditures are about $1.6 million less than what we had anticipated through 10 months of the fiscal year. We'll mention that our fuel expenditures, you'll see, are $127,000 less than what we had estimated. However, that total expenditure to date does not include all of our CNG purchases through April. We actually have about $109,000 of CNG purchases that we incurred in April that actually we didn't get processed and paid in that month, and they'll be reflected in May's financials. So we're actually a lot closer on the budget on fuel than what this report reflects. Overall, our operating income exceeds our overall operating revenue exceeds our expenditures by $1.7 million through 10 months of the fiscal year. Looking on the next page, page 3, this is our parking operation, and again, lots of consistency from month to month. We continue looking at the operating revenue categories there. You can see monthly contract revenue and transient parking revenue continue to exceed the budget, whereas event revenue continues to be less than budget, and basically you can see they kind of offset there for a net effect of total operating revenues being about $135,000 more than what we had anticipated through 10 months of the fiscal year. Again, looking at operating expenditures, consistent in terms of actual expenses to budget. We'll mention that the first expenditure line there, parking garage operations, that does reflect all of the Republic parking contract payments to date, with the exception of the third quarter management incentive. So you'll see that we're about $108,000 less than what we had budgeted once we calculate and process the payment for that incentive. It'll close that gap a bit, but we still expect to be under budget through 10 months of the fiscal year. So with that, looking at our total operating income, our revenues exceed our expenditures by just under $3.3 million through 10 months of the fiscal year. I'm looking at page 4. This is our river cruises operation. And again, would just direct your attention probably to just the total operating revenues line there. You can see that through 10 months of the fiscal year, our operating revenues are $10,000 more than what we had budgeted. However, we're seeing shortfalls in revenue when compared to budget in basically the general fares, the specialty cruises, and the charters lines. That's offset by that payment from the Oklahoma City Riverfront Redevelopment Authority. April was the start of our season. Unfortunately, we had some pretty cold dates in April, so we didn't get off to a really strong start, but we're optimistic about where we'll be through the rest of the summer. Looking at operating expenditures, again, overall, we're about $12,000, I should say just under $13,000 more than what we had budgeted. You'll see most of that overage in the ferry contract operations line, and those overage has to do with the change we made to the contract, where we actually increased the management fee, and then also some additional marketing expenses. And then finishing up with Spokies. Really the highlight on the Spokies budget to actuals is that we continue to see actual bike share revenue exceeding budget through 10 months of the fiscal year. We've collected about $10,000 more in revenue from bike share revenue than what we had anticipated. Overall, our operating income exceeds our expenditures by $29,000. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions on our financials? If not, is there a motion to receive our June 30th, our April 30th financial reports? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on into our program reports. We have streetcar operations reporter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It was a very busy month for us, so let's jump into it. We have, Herzog has submitted 100% of their SOPs, so Embark is currently reviewing those with the legal team and our operations side, making sure that they meet our standards, and we're getting close to wrapping those up. We are continuing to develop our safety and security plans. We continue to have our monthly committee meetings, our rail activation committee meetings, our safety and security meetings. We're also working with Oklahoma City Police Department, Fire Department, and TSA to develop our tabletops and field exercises. So I'm sure most of y'all are aware of what tabletops are. They're simulations of emergency exercises, those types of things. So part of our FTA and SSO certification is that we have to do 2 tabletops and 1 field exercise. So we're working through our tabletops now, and we plan to do our field emergency exercise around November timeframe. We're also working with Herzog and Public Works and Jacobs to work through our transit signal priority integration committee. So we're working toward simulating service in the Bricktown area to see which potential signals and intersections we could install transit signal prioritization to help with maintaining our headways and meeting our timing. We're also wrapping up with the legal team. We're working on some Oklahoma City streetcar ordinances. Most of those ordinances hinge around like making sure that the streetcar is part of the definitions. Since we haven't had a streetcar in many years, we're making sure that our ordinances reflect that we're bringing a streetcar to the system. And then a big milestone, we entered into phase 2 of operations with Herzog Transit May 15th. So what that means is we're entering into the phase now where we start hiring our operators, our supervisors, and our technicians, our inventory clerks, those type of people. So we're getting ready to go into revenue service. So our Systems Integrated Test Committee, one of the first tests that we do before we bring the streetcar out is we take this clearance cart. It's mocked up to the exact dimensions of the streetcar. We take that around the loop, verifying our tolerances to stations, making sure that the trees are cleared, checking our tolerances to signs that have been installed, the new signage along the streetcar route. So we do that first, and then our next test is we do the OCS clearance test. So here we've got this test cart. It's an OCS test cart. I've got a mock-up of the pantograph on it, and basically the team drags that around the Bricktown loop, checking clearances with the OCS wire, verifying that there's no other wires that cross perpendicular to our wire within our tolerance there. So we perform that test, and then we move into the actual testing of clearance test of the streetcar. So Thursday before last, we took the streetcar out around 11 p.m. We started our clearance test there at Hudson, moved it all through the entire Bricktown loop, testing clearances to platforms, and signage, striping, those types of things. So one of the hardest things I had to do with this presentation was pick the coolest pictures. And because Michael and his team and Caitlin and Molly, they were all with us through the whole test taking pictures. It was pretty funny. We'd be walking along with the streetcar, and you'd look down, and there's Caitlin laying on the ground getting the best pictures. So it was pretty fun. We've got a video here showing us walking the streetcar in Bricktown. just kind of show the operation of what it took to get there. One thing to note here is that what you're seeing here is a streetcar in downtown. It hasn't happened since the late 40s, and it's the first modern streetcar in the city. It's a pretty extensive operation. We had the Oakland City Police Department there blocking intersections for us, and it took the team. Got a slide here that shows the pretty exciting. We were out there till about 4:30 a.m. Not the fastest operation, that's for sure. We traveled at about a mile, 2 miles per hour. What's that? It did, yeah. Plenty of clearance, yeah. Yeah, stop the video. No, I'm kidding. No, everything went fine. We met all of our tolerances clearance-wise, so we're great. So this is a team that it took to make all of that happen. We had Oklahoma City Police Department there. We had Brookville. We had Herzog Stacy Whitbeck there. We had Herzog Transit, Embark, Jacobs, Maps. So it was a pretty extensive group. Took a lot. Took a team for sure. I don't know what's going on with that fellow in the middle there. He's a strange character.
Hey, Jesse,
Yes, sir.
while you're talking about the testing there, so, yeah, it was successful in terms of passing all the major tolerances, but
Right.
there's a few items on the platforms
Sure.
that we need to
Yeah, so there were
work
a
on a
few.
little
there
bit.
were-
Just might clarify.
Yeah, so there were a few platforms that, so the Brookville tolerance is 1.5 inches from the threshold to the edge of the platform. That allows for the level boarding for wheelchairs, cyclists, and strollers, those types of things. There were a few platforms that were closer than that 1.5 inch tolerance. One of them was the Scissortail Park stop. It got within 3/4 of an inch, so we're working with the construction team to see if we need to make some adjustments there, and also working with the Brookville team to see if there's any adjustments there. So there was, I think, 3 or 4 platforms that may need to be adjusted slightly. So, thanks, Jason. So construction in the Bricktown Loop, we're getting very, very close to wrapping that up. All that's left really is going hot with the OCS, lane striping, and then there's TWC and traffic signal and signage that needs to be installed. So we do have passable track. Obviously, with us taking the streetcar around the loop, it's passable, but there's still a few things that need to be completed before we could actually do our signal testing and those types of things, such as, like I said, the TWC and the street lights, or signals, sorry. And Milestone C, August 2018. So that did slip a little bit, mostly due to the TWC and the signal lights. Downtown Loop construction continues. Again, so they're mostly up on 11th Street and south side of Robinson, south of 5th Street on Robinson. Milestone D is holding for October of 2018, and Milestone E is holding for November of 2018. Yes, sir.
Well, that's exciting. So
Very exciting.
It's coming fast.
It is. So utilities clear. We are 100% with utilities. It's a huge milestone. Very, very happy there. Track demolition, 86% complete there. Track installation, getting close to 80% complete. OCS foundations, nearly complete there. Station stops, 65% complete. And our substations, 100% complete. And we're holding on the 34% complete with the contact wire. We still got contact wire up in the Midtown area to install. Vehicle procurement. So we have received those 3 cars still. We're still waiting on number 4. Number 4 is expected Monday. Big day, so we'll get our second blue car next Monday. And then we've got vehicle number 5 and number 6 also coming in June. So one of the issues with the slight delay there for vehicle number 4, before they ship the vehicles out, they test the vehicles for perfect alignment. And vehicle number 4 and 5, they were slightly out of alignment, and it had to do with the spring pockets. So there's essentially like a nylon washer that sits on top of the springs, and that nylon washer was slightly bigger than the other vehicles. And so during their test of that alignment, they noticed that. You'll see a picture in here of the vehicle being detrucked so that they could figure out what the issue was, and they figured that out. And so they took that nylon washer and milled it down on the other vehicles, reinstalled it, and we're back to normal. So we should be expecting vehicle number 4 shortly. So vehicle number 1, we've issued a substantial completion for vehicle number 1. That should be going to City Council on Tuesday. Same thing for vehicle number 2 and 3. So what that means is their MAP's office is taking substantial completion of vehicles 1, 2, and 3 to City Council. At that point, they become vehicles owned by the City of Oklahoma City. So we have insurance on the vehicles. We are ready to take ownership of those vehicles. And also what that means is that we will be allowed to, once we get our certification from Brookville, to take the vehicles out on Bricktown. That means that Herzog Transit can actually take the vehicles out by themselves and start doing some training and testing on their own. Because currently, right now, they have to have a Brookville employee with them anytime they take the vehicle out. Vehicle number 4, apologize for the fuzzy picture there, I don't know what happened there, but this picture here you can see where they were de-trucked the vehicle to check those spring pocket alignments and getting that fixed up. And then vehicle number 5, the mean green machine, right? Yeah. So this is vehicle number 5. You can see the beautiful green paint. We're excited to receive this one. It is definitely one of the brightest vehicles. Brookville said that when it shows up, make sure you have sunglasses on because it is very, very bright and will definitely get your attention. That is it. Busy May. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions for Jesse? Not, we thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Item C on the program reports is a long-range plan report. Larry?
Good morning. I've basically got 5 topics. If you were to look at the report in your packets, it's got a lot of topics, but these are the 5 that are perhaps the most developed and perhaps the most interesting. They deal with the Volkswagen settlement, some things related to transit-oriented development, a little update on what's been going on with the Alliance for Public Transportation, a little bit about grants, and then finally a little bit about NEPA. The next slide actually tells you about the Volkswagen settlement. Basically, this is a one-time opportunity where the state, the Department of Environmental Quality, will have about $20 million that they'll be able to spend on different types of clean air initiatives. They'll have a series of, let's call them grant rounds, and the first one will probably be in September. And what we're doing is submitting formal comments to make sure that transit buses and like charging equipment for our garages can be an eligible item. And that September round, not going to include either one of those, but hopefully later this year or the first part of 2019, we'd be able to apply for perhaps our second electric bus or perhaps CNG buses. So, we're interested, and again, like I said, we've provided formal comments. On the second item, this next slide, is about transit-oriented development. As we've mentioned in the past, really, land use has so much to do with driving ridership because people want to get on at a place that they want to be. They want to get off at a place that attracts them as well. And so one key way to try to get more development that's really closely related to transit is to work with the investors and the developers who basically are in that business around the city and trying to get them to develop here, close to transit as opposed to there. And we had 2 opportunities in this past couple of months. We were able to design a program for the Urban Land Institute's trip to Austin, and about 40 or 50 people were down there, and we arranged for Austin's Capital Metro Transit to talk about something they call the TOD priority tool. And I think that was well received, and they got to visit a lot of transit-oriented development sites, either on their 2 bus rapid transit lines, which they call Metro Rapid, or on their commuter rail, and that was good. But on a local basis, we also were able to get on the Commercial Real Estate Council's bus tour last month and present the different stops and locations along this potential Northwest Bus Rapid Transit site, and to talk about housing, and also that was also a tour that was about accessibility for a wide range of the population, including people with disabilities. So, we were able to reach about 70 people with that core message about the importance of trying to make your investments near transit. The third item, and the next slide, talks about the Alliance for Public Transportation. They actually had about 6 hours of programming this spring that was a Transit Leadership Academy. A couple of Embark staff were presenters out of the 8 or so that they had. And those people at the Academy learned a lot about all aspects of transit, especially about transit funding and finance, which was a good topic for them. So that was good. And that has also kind of led Embark to help them with their idea they submitted to the Community Foundation for this Great Idea Challenge that you might have heard about. And their idea is really about the future of mobility, goes well beyond just transit and talks about the movement of goods as well. We'll see what happens, but if they were to be one of the finalists, then that only says good things about promoting transit. And then the next two items are really kind of quick ones about grant opportunities. There's probably 4 different FTA grant opportunities out there this summer. We'll have to be judicious about which ones we apply for. But one that's really very important is applying for this 5339B grant, because it relates to keeping our buses in a state of good repair and preparing for how the fleet might change. There may be a need for an additional bay or a bay that can really better accommodate a longer bus, like a 60-foot bus. Our buses are clean, but the bus wash equipment eventually becomes old, needs to be replaced. And these are pretty large capital items, and we'll probably apply for $2 to $3 million and formulate that list as the summer gets on. There's even a grant out there for transit-oriented development planning, and we'll have to kind of see if that's really something we want to do or not. The final thing is about the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. As you know, in order to apply for federal capital grants to build transit, you have to get through that NEPA step. And sometime in June, we'll be interviewing a number of firms to do the NEPA work on this potential Northwest Bus Rapid Transit Corridor. And so hopefully we'll be able to have them on board by early middle part of December. And even though you have to do it for the federal grants, because you get down to so many of the specifics about a route and where stops are, et cetera, it really becomes very helpful information to local decision makers and trying to move the project, say, into the engineering phase. So with that, as the old song says, see you in September with some more comments. I hope they're more interesting than these, but if you have any questions, glad to answer them.
Are there any questions for Larry?
Larry, did you get to go on the ULI trip?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So did Austin talk about, or do they perceive that they have a traffic problem in Austin?
Well, they do. That came up a lot. They have a tremendous traffic problem.
So did they say what they're doing to alleviate that or address that issue?
Well, they do have the commuter rail that goes out to Leander. That's a help for people coming in from the north side, for instance. But, they have something down there called the Metro Rapids, routes 801 and 803. And those are very frequent bus rapid transit types of deals. And so that's kind of one of the things about TOD is that if you could get more people to sort of live and work along that line, then they're riding that and not contributing to the congestion on the highway. So transit's a part of their strategy for addressing congestion. Exactly what they're going to do about I-35 is unclear,
Yeah.
But sure, they have a tremendous traffic congestion problem.
Well, so Dallas has their commuter rail that runs from Dallas up to North Texas, and so Austin has one. But do any of the cities in Texas have a streetcar in place?
Well, Dallas does, the one that goes from the Union Station area of downtown over to Oak Cliff to the south. And it's a very short route, and they have plans to expand it, but they just have that initial route. And if I could clarify, Austin has commuter rail, and I think Fort Worth is opening commuter rail line quite different than light rail like what Dallas has, but they do have, those two cities especially, well, those three, have some type of a commuter rail type of system.
But Austin is looking at a rapid bus system to help alleviate their congestion.
Already in place. They opened those routes in 2014.
And they like the results of it?
They do, enough that in that thing they called the TOD priority tool, they focused on the two Metro Rapid routes and then also on that commuter rail that goes to Leander. So they're very pleased with it. It's very, very frequent, has a long span of hours, and they use the longer buses. I think they call them bendy buses in Austin.
Yeah. Well, I just think it'll be interesting when we can move closer to at least one of those bus rapid transit routes coming online here to see what impact it has. But again, our congestion is nothing like they have down there in the Austin area. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I could suggest, part of this concept of Northwest Bus Rapid Transit is not just commuters trying to get from way out there to down here, but about livability all along the corridor. People who really may be starting not necessarily at the end and not necessarily trying to get to the other end, but because if you pair up a couple of dozen stops, it really makes a large part of the city very easy to live in. So it's really not just about commuters.
Thank you.
Larry, is it this summer when we're going to hear more from the federal government about the Tiger Grant? Is that June? Is that when that happens? Or?
Well, they do have a round that closes in July, and now they've come up with a program called BUILD, and BUILD stands for Better Utilizing Infrastructure to Leverage Development, okay? I'll say that again. Better Utilizing Infrastructure to Leverage Development, BUILD. And yeah, that's a major program, and really, between Cotpa and the city, we're still trying to evaluate just whether we'll apply and what that might look like.
I was at my middle school yesterday talking with some of the administrative assistants and had mentioned how in Plan OKC there's, the possibility for bus rapid transit connecting the airport to downtown and then going down Southeast 59th Street. Well, that's right by my middle school. And when I mentioned that to them, everyone's eyes just lit up because they started telling me there's one woman who works there. She goes to school at UCO up in Edmond, and it's darn near impossible often to get from, around Southeast 66th Street up there for her. And, there were a lot of conversations about the transfers that they have to do. They were talking a lot about those, and that's why I told them the importance of having, more funding for more buses, because that's how we alleviate that problem. But no, it was just really interesting. I had not spoken to those administrative assistants before about public transportation, and the feedback I was getting about how excited they would be to have something like BRT over there, just to connect them to something as simple as the grocery store that's right down the street on Walker and 59th, right? It's a bit of a challenge to get from Prairie Queen neighborhood down there. And one of the secretaries, something else too, I know everyone on this board, we're so used to understanding the importance of sidewalks. One of the assistants, she asked me, she was like, well, why? Like, why sidewalks? And it was a very jarring question because up here we talk about them all the time. And it's kind of laid it out for her, the importance of being able to walk on a safe sidewalk to get from your door to that bus stop. And when you explain it in this way, it was like the light bulbs all went off. But it just also spoke to how disconnected a lot of our citizens can feel. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the grant this summer and then kind of picking up the torch from there to see what we can do to get that BRT line going over on the south side too. I just think it'd be a game changer. And then, like you said, people will start living. There's already people who live along that line on 59th Street, right? And I think for them having the opportunity to see more economic opportunity along Southeast 59th. I don't know. That was just a conversation I had yesterday. I just wanted to share it with you all. So.
Okay, any other questions for Larry? If not, thank you very much. Item E then is our marketing, customer relations, and technology report. Michael?
Good morning. It's good to be before you again, and thank you for this opportunity. We've got quite a bit going on, as others do, and one of those areas I'd like to speak to you about is our alternative transportation options, which is bike share and ferry transit. This is the peak season for them, as Jeannie mentioned last month, just that this is a big time to start growing ridership and seeing those numbers go up. Some of the ways we're supporting that are through digital ads as well as community events and social media. These are just a few of the sampling of the materials we produce on that behalf. We continue to see really great engagement through these mediums, and we'll continue to use these to their fullest. They are changing constantly. We're seeing audiences shift from one to another, so it does take some staff time to just continue to monitor that, analyze which are the most effective, and then execute a campaign that targets those audiences. Another thing that we've got going on that you approved last month were the summer fare changes and service changes that will take place in July 29th. There's a significant amount of staff time associated with implementing this, not only in my division but throughout the entire organization. There's a lot of coordination that must take place with employee training, We're also working on Route 50 rebranding, because that's been an area where we want to see ridership grow, and especially since we are positioning it to help support the efforts of the streetcar by inviting the Deep Deuce, more residential areas into that walking shed that we have learned most people are willing to walk to get to any type of transit stop. We've been able to present this change and these changes to a variety of audiences, and one key audience is urban neighbors. That's the downtown kind of homeowners association, or those who live in the downtown area. And they were very excited, I would say, about the Route 50 and that ability to help them get to streetcar stops, especially when walking isn't necessarily something they'd want to do dependent on weather. And also in the Deep Deuce area, it's a little more of a challenging walk from one area just due to the hills and different things of that nature. So if there's a person who also has trouble walking a great distance, this will help them get closer to the streetcar and to our other transit services. It'll connect them at the transit center as well. And in addition, we will be promoting heavily that night route addition that will be taking place in the northeast part of Oklahoma City. Already we've received quite a bit of great feedback and a lot of ideas on how we can further connect people to jobs using our night services and making them aware of new shift opportunities and opportunities that might be related to education as well as just health services. We're also in the midst of a comprehensive safety campaign for our streetcar. Just recently, we launched a pedestrian safety campaign, again using similar mediums such as the social media, digital ads that are focused on a geographic area, and if you go into that area, it can follow you and know and present our ad to you. And again, the purpose for some of that is to ensure that you're aware of the streetcar, its construction, and also how you should act around the streetcar. As you know, many others do not know that the streetcar cannot veer off of the tracks. They have they just say, well, can't they go around? Well, you know, and then when they kind of think about it and you point it out, they go, oh, I guess not. And so this is just an opportunity to reintroduce them to rail. They don't necessarily connect it to like the commuter or the freight rail that's going through various communities and all kind of holds us up sometimes at the tracks. But we're making that connection and helping them realize there's a similar safety concern. And this is the latest one that just started.
The OKC streetcar passes through pedestrian spaces like crosswalks and intersections, but it can't stop as quickly as you can. So, it's important to stay safety aware. Know the signs and look for markings. Always use designated crosswalks and mind the signals. Give the streetcar some space, about 10 feet, and always keep an eye out and listen for our bell.
All right, so we've got several things associated with that. Again, in print, we have brochures working in the works and will be coming out as well. That'll cover a myriad of our safety points. Others of those include testing motorists and how they should act around the streetcar. And later on, we'll be focusing on how to use the service. So coming up, we've got a pretty busy June with just community engagement efforts. Some of the things Larry mentioned earlier, just like with the ULI, all of these here before you are events in which Embark was invited to participate. And that's a pretty significant thing to kind of consider. And I want to thank you all because I think it's in part due to your leadership and with your board initiatives as well as that at City Council, and that transportation has become a topic in which the community wants to learn more about. And not just our community at large, but it's also our business partners, it's our social service agencies, and it's our schools. And so each one of these represents where we didn't seek out, but they sought us out. One that's really interesting is the CVB Customer Advisory Committee. This is a committee in which the Convention and Visitors Bureau invites in a number of individuals who are influencers in event planning for large conventions. In anticipation of the convention center coming up, they are seeking input now from peers on what are the important things that help drive decisions and related to bringing larger conventions here. They were very excited about the streetcar, but also they reached out to us asking us if we can share about what we're doing with bus transportation and the streetcar and how it all connects, realizing that we have many hotels throughout the downtown area, but also throughout in all of Oklahoma City that have some type of convention or serve as overflow hotels for those customers. And so they're very interested in the efforts that we have in connecting them with the convention center and then also making Oklahoma City a destination in which people wish to travel. Also, the 10KC event was held in May, and that's also has been a really good, it's our second year to participate, and this has been a little different than what you might see with Open Streets, where Open Streets is typically the large majority of people that come through our bus have never stepped on a bus before. 10KC has allowed us to re-engage with past customers, even engage with our current customers, and definitely introduce some potential customers to our services. Again, Route 22 and the night service being added was extremely well received, and there's quite a bit of excitement building just around that one thing alone. So that really concludes the updates I have for you. I do want to let you know that we've got an update coming to you in September we're very excited about, and that's regarding our streetcar stop sponsorships. We've been very busy in that area trying to solicit and secure the sponsorships. Right now, what I can tell you is that we have 7 commitments and then many others out pending to signatures. So we're we feel like it's very promising to have that many this soon, and we hope to have them definitely sold or committed by the time we launch. And again, that's been a great partnership with Houck Advertising, and they've been representing Embark and our city very well. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Michael?
All right.
Great job, thank you. We've have 7 program reports. I guess we've received those reports. Is there a motion to receive them?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Item 10 is items from the trustee. James? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Jason, do the fuels that we use for our buses, do they tend to fluctuate like gasoline prices do with respect to as we get into the warmer months, prices go up? So that includes, is it the diesel, or is it the diesel and the CNG? I mean, is it all the fuel?
Primarily the diesel and really even the regular unleaded that we use for some of our service vehicles.
I see.
We get some fluctuation on CNG as well, but, you know, going back to kind of our analysis and looking at transitioning to CNG, you typically will see less fluctuation. So
Yeah.
a little bit more stable than diesel and unleaded.
And I'm not suggesting this, but should we ever get into a situation where we saw significant increases, I guess we would always have the ability to adjust the fares for the bus system if they rose significantly in a very short period of time.
Yes, the trustees would have that discretion.
So if we go back to 2012 and 13, I can't remember, I don't think we made any adjustments, but when we saw oil prices get up well above $100 a barrel and the related gasoline prices increase as well, I don't think we made any adjustments midterm or mid-year to accommodate or offset that increase.
No,
Anyway.
not from the fare box
Yeah.
standpoint.
I'm not making any kind of suggestions, I'm just
From the
raising
city
the
council
potential.
standpoint, they did rescue us back in '06, '07.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Where the oil prices were very, very high.
Yeah.
I think the
Right.
good news might be that when the oil prices go up, more people might ride the bus. So we might get more revenue in that way and help
Yeah.
offset that
Sure.
fuel cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, Laura? Great. Steve? Okay. Well, we are moving on into executive session.